Welcome to the Hammer Factor, where we help successful athletes and professionals share their genius with the world. I'm John Grace, your host here at the hot seat, and now it's time to light this fire.
All right, welcome to this episode of the Hammer Factor. In the hot seat today, we have true pioneer of river SUP, adventure bus owner, and river engineer. Welcome to the show, Spencer Lacy.
Yeah, thanks for having me, John.
Yeah, man, I've been excited to do this one for a while. It's been on the burner, and I figured, we got some time right now. What are you doing to occupy yourself these days?
Just, working a lot, and I'm trying to get out in the sunshine as much as I can while social distancing, of course, and, spending some time with friends on video calls and whatnot, taking care of some odds and ends, planning some adventures.
Good time for planning.
Yeah.
Before we get too deep into this, what can you tell our audience something that maybe they don't know about you?
I actually played classical piano for 8 years when I was a teenager. I was really into it. My mom had my brother and I start at a young age, and we performed at recitals, actually traveled to Ireland for a tour performing classical piano. So that was a pretty big part of my childhood.
So do you have a piano in your house right now?
Oh, yeah.
And is it like a wall style, or is it a big grand piano? What do you play on?
Yeah, it's a wall style. I actually don't own one myself. It's the same one that I learned on growing up. So it's my mom's piano, and I still practice here and there, but not like I used to.
There you go. God, I wish I tried to learn an instrument when I was younger. For some reason, my neighbor had a French horn, and he tried to teach me how to play it, and I just never could get it.
Yeah.
One of these days. All right, so let's start from the beginning. Before you were taking your SUP down the Grand Canyon and whatnot, where are you from, and how did you get into Whitewater?
Yeah, so definitely a unique childhood. I grew up in Boulder, Colorado, and I have an older brother who's 2 years older than me, and so family of four, and our house is right on Boulder Creek, close to downtown Boulder. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Boulder Creek, but I call it the most underrated section of Whitewater in the country. It's not really known for its paddling, but it's really, really awesome, especially for locals. Literally right on Boulder Creek, we have a beach down by the creek that we hang out on. We have a hot tub right next to the creek. It has really great flows for pretty much every single May, June, July for paddling of any sort. We take friends down the creek. So that was my first real intro. Was my dad threw me in a kayak when I was about 5 years old and took me down Boulder Creek. My family has a big whitewater background. My dad grew up kayaking. His dad got him into it. Pretty epic family connection to whitewater. So definitely has been a huge part of my life since I can remember.
What did I don't know how many years ago it was, but there was a huge flood on that creek some years back, wasn't there? Like a thunderstorm flood?
Oh, yeah. 2013. I was going to school, University of Colorado Boulder, so I actually went to college in Boulder as well. And the flood was a huge deal here in the Front Range. Boulder Creek usually peaks at like 800, maybe 1,000 CFS on a normal year, but it was more like 7,000 or 8,000 flowing through downtown Boulder. So the creek got huge, and everybody in Boulder totally freaked out. There was people living along the creek were told to evacuate their houses. Everything was shut down. People were like fighting floods out of their basements and whatnot. But we took the opportunity to take our kayaks out and go paddle through downtown Boulder in the middle of the flood. And that was one of the best whitewater experiences of my life for sure. Pretty unique.
Like any good kayaker should. When did you migrate away from kayaking? I think I've only seen you in a kayak maybe one or two times, and it's always been on a board. Where did that migration happen?
As teenagers, we were way into kayaking, play boating, class 5 whitewater, paddling all over Colorado every summer, but never got like super into the heavy competition. Dabbled a little in slalom kayaking, a little bit in play boating competition. My dad has a huge history in wildwater racing, so downriver kayak racing. I don't know if people are familiar with that type of boat, but big, long, like 14-foot long fiberglass, super tippy boat down the river as fast as you can. So my brother and I got pretty into that, but then let's see, it was when I was like 19 or 20, so like 7 years ago now. Zach Hughes and Mike Harvey in Salida started paddling paddleboards on the Arkansas River, and I spent a ton of time in Salida, and those guys are some of my good friends. I've known them forever. So I started doing it with them. And so Mike Harvey kind of got me into it, started playing around on his boards, and I think it totally consumed me because it's super new and exciting, saw a lot of potential in the sport, and also got into it at the very, very beginning. So, and it came easy to me because I understood whitewater so well, and I have pretty good balance. So it came really easily. So I immediately was excited because I was one of the best at it. That's exciting. And just saw the potential and a really cool, new, exciting way to enjoy the river, new way to bring friends on the river. So I kind of just totally transitioned. Driving my van across the country, I didn't have a single kayak on my roof anymore. It was 4 paddleboards instead. So it's a pretty epic transition for me. Still love kayaking though.
What was everybody saying, like those super early days when you guys, because that was sort of a, really a hot spot as far as pioneering whitewater SUP. Like, what kind of looks were you getting? What were people saying? Were there haters? Was everybody loving on it? What was it like?
Oh, that's a good question. The vibe in Salida is just so good, everybody's supporting each other if you're on the river doing anything at all. So the vibe was good, and people thought it was cool that we were trying new stuff. Especially Zach was so good at river surfing. Salida, everyone thought that was really, really cool. And then, the second year I was into it, I just took it to the next level. I was like, what can I possibly do? And so I was just trying to send the NAR and like do stuff. And, I was, we were usually performing better, at least us, the Badfish crew, usually performing better than people would expect. And so it was, people were stoked on it. Yeah. Not to say that there wasn't a shit ton of carnage and swimming and everything too, but yeah.
Well, give me one of the worst case scenario swims you had in those early days trying to figure it out.
Well, I was smart, and most of the learning I did in whitewater parks, safe environments. But I don't know. So we're in Boulder, and at that, when I was first getting started, it didn't have any really any Badfish boards of my own, and so my buddy and I in Boulder, we just took like 12-foot long, like pretty shitty inflatable paddle boards up into Upper Boulder Canyon, which is like solid class 4 plus. We did it at kind of a high water level, and we had like 9-inch plus fins on the bottom of the boards, and it was just a complete disaster. We swam basically the whole thing. I think I broke 2 of my ribs falling on a rock, and And just looking back on that now, it's like, what were we thinking? We're on these 12-foot long boards. We could hardly control them with these huge fins hitting every single rock. It was complete carnage. So try to take, smaller steps after that.
Leash or no leash?
Always leash for me. I especially like straight leashes as short as possible. Badfish has got the releash. They make it at 6 foot straight, and I like that because the releash, you attach to your life jacket and you can pull the pin if you get into a bad situation, and you can always reach it. It's right there at your side. And yeah, even if I go and paddleboard a creek or like Boulder Creek, I always wear the leash because I know I can release it. But losing your board, like your board can be your lifeline in a lot of ways. And if you lose your board, you can get in a much worse situation, So, and then even more so in big water, like anytime I'm paddling something like the Grand Canyon, it's like I can't imagine not having a leash. Like I'm literally always pulling on the thing to get back to my board, climb back on. It just makes recovery time way, way quicker.
Let's talk about the Grand Canyon. Let's start from the top. When did you get the idea? I'm going to take my board down the Grand Canyon.
Let's see. Well, I had rafted the Grand Canyon twice when I was a teenager. And so I kind of knew what it was like. I knew what to expect. And then I was finishing my undergrad at CU, and my older brother, Mason, got a last-minute cancellation permit for a December Grand Canyon trip, which, it's the desert, but it gets really cold down there in the winter. And he had work, and other friends had work, and I had to get back to school and graduate. So we're like, okay, we're going to do this thing in 6 days. So that means no rafts because they can't go fast enough. So just self-support. So it was 5 of us, 4 kayakers and me on a paddleboard, gear strapped to the front of the board. Went for the 12-foot long board so that I could go fast enough on the flat water to keep up and make that 6-day deadline. So yeah, I was at that point, it was right at the beginning of my Whitewater sub career. So I was just super stoked on trying anything that other people would do, like my friends would do in a kayak, I would want to do on a paddleboard. So that's kind of what got me out there on the board. And I was like, yeah, a couple people have paddleboarded in the Grand Canyon before, but nobody's done every single inch of it on the board, self-supported in 6 days. So I knew I was, doing something that no one else had done before. So that was exciting. That trip was insane. I could go into some more details on that specific trip, but then also I've been down the Grand Canyon another 3 times since then that have been a lot more chill rafting trips, 20 days, bring all your friends, all the beer kind of trip. But I, of course, bring the paddleboard, row in the raft for a lot of it, but I still get on the sub for every single one of the big name rapids. Usually run it on the raft, run back up, and run it on the sub. So that's kind of where most of the videos and stuff have come from, is from those trips where I'm on, a shorter board that's more stable than that long board I took the first time. And the Whitewater was a lot more successful those times around.
So let's back up to that first trip. So just to fill our listeners in, you're doing what, 40 miles a day, something like that?
Yeah, averaging 40 miles a day. Yeah, it's 226 miles. We did it in 5.5 days.
Okay, and so you've got a couple of dry bags stashed on the front of your boat. Obviously, you're a groover. What were the park rangers saying?
Oh, well, he checked out all our gear. Those guys are pretty much just all business. I think he definitely had a little bit of a smirk when he looked at the paddleboard with the gear stacked on the front. And he definitely made note of what it looked like and everything, just to, in case he had to collect my carnage a couple days later.
So you make that trip. I'm sure on the 12-foot board there was plenty of swimming action. But I'm sure you greased some stuff too, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it's that big water. Like if you read it right and you can predict things, it's easier than it looks in a lot of ways. But yeah, the 12-foot board made it hard. If you can imagine the stack of gear on the front, anytime a wave would crash onto that, it would just stop me or hit me from the side. So that made it hard. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the class, Grand Canyon class scale is up to 10, whereas usually it's just 6. So yeah, I greased a lot of the class 5, 6 stuff, but got real worked on some of the bigger ones in that first self-support trip, definitely.
So are there any, through all of your trips down there on the board, have you cleaned all the rapids? Is there any of them you haven't made it through?
Yes, I've never made it through Crystal. I've on the last trip, I finally stood all the way through Hermit and Lava. And the trip before that, I cleaned Granite. So it's collectively, I've cleaned Hermit, Granite, and Lava, which are 3 of the biggest, but never Crystal. That one's my nemesis.
Dude, I mean, people talk about Lava, and Lava has a good reputation. It's definitely, but I think Crystal's the hardest rapid out there. I mean, this is just in a kayak.
Yeah, I think definitely the hardest rapid in the Grand Canyon to paddleboard. Also, it's the only place that I've ever flipped a raft in my life. A raft that I was rowing with a bunch of gear. It's the only place I've ever flipped a raft at all. Also in Crystal.
Where, at the top wave?
No. It's this was in 2016. Had my girlfriend and her friend on the raft, which adds an element for sure. Greased the entrance, and then I had left my paddleboard halfway through the rapid on a beach on the right because I had paddled it first in the paddleboard, and Crystal's such a long rapid that I just pulled over and left it there so it'd be easier. Anyways, so I was like a third of the way through the rapid rowing the raft, and then I decided to turn the raft sideways and go row over to my paddleboard halfway through Crystal. Looking back, that was pretty stupid because as soon as I turned sideways, I caught like a little mini curler, and it just surfed me straight into the wall on River Left. So we flipped on the wall, which was kind of scary for everybody. And
that's gnarly on the left over there.
Yeah, it's not where you want to swim. There's like gnarly swirlies and everything. My girlfriend spent some time underwater, so it's kind of ugly.
Oh, dude. So you go down the Grand Canyon. You've taken your paddleboard down it. You've self-supported it in 6 days. You had to have been tired. I mean, had to have just worn your ass out.
That trip was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life.
I mean, it had to have been. I mean, so you had to have just got on your butt at some point. I mean, how did you rest up, or were you on your feet paddling through all those flats the whole time? Yeah,
always on the feet. I mean, I just think that's way more comfortable as far as paddleboarding goes, to be standing up rather than on my knees on the board. So standing up, unless I was recovering from a swim partway through rapid, get on the knees first, straighten the board kind of thing. But besides that, it's always on the feet, and definitely paddling into every rapid on the feet. Never, always attempting the stand rather than going for the knees from the get-go. And the first day was 50 miles. We paddled the first day into the night. I've never been so exhausted in my life. There's the paddling, trying to keep up with the kayakers on the flat water, and then the swimming is so exhausting. And I was delirious. I was even falling off in just some random little riffles and stuff. And then came around a corner, and my buddies were ahead of me. And then there's this epic party going on a beach. This rafting trip, they were on a 28-day trip, and they brought everything. They brought so many rafts, all the bells and whistles. They were grilling up burgers and steaks, and they yelled at us to come over. We ended up having a disco party and partying with them that night. It was the perfect ending to 50 miles of pain.
Yeah, you got all nice and rested up for the next 4 days.
Yeah.
So you've done these trips down the canyon, and at what point was it a good idea to get in the inner tubes and go through lava? Like, I saw this on your Instagram, I saw this on your gram, and I was like, what in the hell? So who was that, and what brought that on?
Well, tubing is also a big part of my life.
It seems, yeah.
Like our crew in Boulder and in Colorado, kind of me and my friends and my dad especially, we've gotten way into whitewater tubing. We kind of take it to the next level, for sure. The next level. Boulder Creek comes up, and we're the only ones out there tubing it. Solid class 4, and so it made sense to bring the tubes on our past 2 trips down the Grand Canyon. It's like tubing is so underrated and so much fun, and it's just goofy, and you can laugh at it, and you can laugh at each other. But it does require a certain amount of skill, especially when you start hitting crystal and lava in the tubes. So I just mainly it's just so fun. Like tubing through Hermit is one of the best experiences of my life, no joke. Anyway, so that was just me and one of my buddies tubing through lava, and just put the head down, floated right into that thing, and didn't expect to be upright at the bottom. And next thing we knew, both of us were still upright somehow. And yeah, that was that. We were stoked.
I'll put your Instagram handle in the show notes. You got to watch this video. They cleaned it. You guys greased it.
Greased lava, got worked in pretty much every single other big rapid on the tubes. But
how many rapids did you tube? Did you tube Horn?
Oh, yeah. We had the tubes kind of deflated on the rafts for a lot of the flat water and stuff, but we'd blow them up for any of the big name rapids. My friend that I actually grew up with in Boulder, he's not a kayaker, he's not a paddleboarder, he's not a whitewater guy, but he loves tubing, and he was in his tube in the water for probably at least 100 of the 226 miles on that trip.
God.
So we tubed a lot of it.
That just sounds pervasively fun. I'm not sure why.
Yeah, it was good.
No, it's epic. The video and the photos of you, paddleboarding down the Grand are some of like the most spectacular I've ever seen on a paddleboard. Props for making that happen.
Yeah.
On the topic of your Instagram, I saw some recent pictures of a trip to Iceland that you took over there. Now, you went over to Iceland. Before we get into who you went with and kind of what the mission was, you left the tube and you left the paddleboard at home and you took a pack raft. So tell me about that mish and why you picked that piece of gear.
Yeah, pack rafting is becoming really popular in the whitewater community, and not even just in the whitewater community. Lots of adventure athletes are going for pack rafts for good reason. You can go on adventures in a pack raft that you wouldn't be able to consider with a kayak or a paddleboard, because you can roll it up to the size and weight of a sleeping bag and hike it in. You can bike it in, ski it in, blow that thing up, and you strap your gear. You can even stuff gear into the tubes of the pack raft. You can actually carry a lot of stuff, and you can get so creative with these adventures. Sky's the limit as far as remote places remote rivers and creeks that you can get to. The crafts definitely have their limits when it comes to the gnarliness of the whitewater you can run. But besides that, like, you can get anywhere in those things.
So what was your mission in Iceland? What was the plan?
Yeah, so that trip was really, really cool. So my brother definitely has a knack. He's 2 years older than me, so he's 30 right now. He definitely has a knack for coming up with really creative, unique adventures that nobody's done before. There's definitely a couple of examples of that, but this was one of his ideas. So it was just me and him and our childhood friend, Joey Schusler, who's a filmmaker, photographer. and Joey doesn't have much whitewater experience, so he was a little bit over his head. So the mission was to go source to sea on this river that is, the name of it is pretty much impossible to pronounce. The spelling is insane. It's Markarfló River in Iceland, southern Iceland, and source to sea. So it was 6 days. We hiked in with the pack rafts. We took a public bus to this hot springs and then hiked a really long ways to where we could first start floating the first bit of water that we could float the boats, and paddled from there all the way to the ocean. Took 6 days, and we paddled through the most insane scenery I've ever been in my entire life. It completely blew my mind.
So when you got to the ocean, was there a town there, or what was your ending destination?
Yeah, it was kind of perfect. We took this public bus to the hot springs for the start, and hiked like not even that far to get to where we needed to be. And then we paddled into the ocean, and then we paddled like 2 miles along the coast to another bus station, another tourist spot, and jumped on another public bus, and then went back to civilization. It was so easy.
Brilliant. So what do you do? I mean, you just rolling with like a hefty patch kit out there? Do you ever break your pack raft?
Yeah, definitely. Being able to roll your boat up to the size and weight of a sleeping bag definitely has its limitations when it comes to, durability. But Kokopelli Pack Raft, that's the brand that we have. They made a heavier duty one that doesn't roll up quite as small and as light, and that's the one we brought to Iceland because we knew there's a lot of sharp volcanic rock and just gnar, and we're going to be way out there. But I did end up ripping a hole in my pack raft just for one of the scouts. I kind of like dragged it up onto the rocks without much thought and just tore a big hole. And I was struggling with that for a while because Joey actually forgot to pack the patch kits. So luckily we had some Gorilla Tape, so it was kind of a battle for me for the rest of the trip, but it worked out.
Oh, rugged! So you were constantly every night drying it out and repatching it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Oh well, epic. What was the landscape like on this river?
Oh, it was something straight out of Lord of the Rings. It was very, very rugged, barren. The weather there is so intense. This was August, the middle of the summer. It was still just so gnarly. Like Iceland is a brutal place. Anyways, so there's no trees, hardly any big plants at all. There's moss everywhere. 600 species of moss in Iceland. So just everything is green, but like this weird, like, no trees kind of green and barren. And the only real wildlife we saw is all these sheep just roaming. They would like walk along these cliffs that there's like no way we would climb on, and so lots of sheep and lots of wild berries and stuff. But the canyon was, we went through multiple canyons that were just spectacular. Can't even put it into words. And just so unique, the landscape, like nothing I've ever seen. So that was definitely the highlight of the trip, was just what we were looking at. And then there was also some really fun whitewater on that river too. It was great.
Like classic, like I've seen in the past, waterfalls out of Iceland, or was it?
Iceland's super famous for its waterfalls, for good reason. There was tons of waterfalls coming in from tributaries. And then on the river itself, there's two huge waterfalls that, one that we would not consider in our kayaks, one that we would consider in our kayaks, but certainly not in the pack rafts. Two that we portaged, and then one small one that was like the perfect little hucker drop for a pack raft.
How tall is that?
That was about 20 feet.
Nice.
So my brother, Joey walked around that one, but my brother and I dropped off of that, cleaned it. That felt pretty good. And then further down, once the river got bigger and the canyon got deeper, so remote, like literally we were pulling over and hanging out in places that probably no one's ever stepped foot before because kayakers haven't been there because it's so remote and hard to get to in a kayak. And hikers can't get down there. Anyways, there's some solid class 4 plus whitewater in the bottom of this one canyon, and that got pretty rowdy too.
I'm intrigued with the pack rafting.
Yeah, it's great.
I'm gonna have to give it a go. What did your rig weigh? Like full food, full everything when you were hiking into the start of that trip?
Yeah, it was like carrying a small human. So I don't know, like 80 pounds.
And is it tucked in pretty nice? I mean, do you feel like you're carrying, outside of the weight, is it like, is it all over the place and you're like, bobbing and weaving, or does it?
You mean the hiking or the paddling?
Yeah, no, the hiking. Like, I'm just interested in, I've done quite a bit of carrying my kayak into places, and I'm interested in how much easier or how much more efficient you could be versus carrying a kayak, because carrying a kayak sucks.
Oh yeah, I've carried a kayak into some remote places too, and I hate it. It's not even comparable. It's like backpacking. You're just backpacking with a little extra weight. Especially with the rafts that we had, the ones that are more durable, they don't roll up as tight, they're a little heavier. For that trip, it was a really big backpack basically is what you could picture. On some of the other trips where you bring the lighter pack raft, like it's just a normal backpack. You just hike in, you're on a backpacking trip, and then you blow that thing up and jump in the water. Also, I haven't been on too many pack rafting trips, but my brother and Joey have been on a million. They went to Mongolia and did a bike packing pack rafting trip. So they biked for miles and miles, days and days with the pack raft strapped to their handlebars, and then got in the water and strapped their mountain bikes onto their pack rafts and paddled out. So
I guess the possibilities are kind of endless.
Yeah, definitely.
You can throw your skis in there, the whole 9 yards. Huh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of people do ski pack rafting adventures too.
I'm definitely going to have to check that out. In the intro, we talked about you being an engineer. Tell me about that. This is your professional life, correct?
Yeah. So I graduated from University of Colorado with a civil engineering degree. And I've worked very variable part-time for the past 4 years. So that means it's kind of like doing homework. So just getting the work done, turning it in on time, also not trying to take on too many projects, whatnot during paddling season. So the background is it's my dad's Gary Lacy. He's a bit of a legend in the whitewater world. It's his company that he started in the 80s, and it's a whitewater park design company. So designing in-stream recreation for people of all types. Not just kayakers, not just paddleboarders, but the entire community. Bank work, bike paths, river access, that whole deal. So if anyone's ever been to Salida, is one of the iconic spots, or Reno, Nevada, just projects all over the country, almost always downtown, in the middle of a city, just reconnects the community to the river, while creating some pretty awesome whitewater opportunity for locals, for people learning to kayak or paddleboard or whatever, for tubers, swimmers, families sitting by the bank reading a book. So when I graduated with my undergrad, it was kind of a no-brainer to do that part-time while I was also pursuing my paddling career. Yeah.
Let me ask you this. So what makes a good candidate for a whitewater park? Like, how do these things come to being? Like, how does a whitewater park just happen?
Well, almost always it's a um, a town, just a little municipal government that some Parks and Rec director or somebody in the community visits a place like Salida or a place like Reno and sees the Whitewater Park and like, that is cool. We want that in our town. We have a river flowing through our town that nobody pays attention to. Like, that's what we want. So it's almost always they see another example and they contact us. Every once in a while we reach out and to people, but almost always it's people, cities contacting us, telling us that they want a Salida Whitewater Park in their town, basically. So that's kind of how it comes about. And then you go there and you do a site visit, and it has to be drop, obviously, in their river through their town. They have to have some money to pay for it. They, make sure everybody's excited about it. And a lot of times there's a dangerous feature in the river, like a low-head dam. More than half of our projects are modifications of dangerous, failing low-head dams. That is another really awesome advantage of it is, we can modify these dams that were like killing people a lot of the time, turn it into a crazy, awesome amenity for the community.
Have you ever had a situation like this? So they're building this bridge right near the river in Asheville here on the French Broad. You've paddled this section. Do you know where we started the distance race at the Battle of the Broad at that park? So maybe, I don't know, 100 yards downriver through those rocks. I don't know if you remember those rocks in that section. They're putting a bridge there, and they're putting a pylon in the bridge, 2 pylons in the river. And I was thinking, man, there should be some kind of like mitigation effort or something where, as part of putting this bridge and these pylons in the river, you have to do some kind of improvement. Have you ever seen any kind of model where it's someone's going to build something or affect the river in a certain way, and part of sort of the clause for them being able to do that in a public waterway, they got to make some kind of improvement?
Yeah, there's some stuff that can relate to that. Usually it's an environmental thing. You always have to apply for all kinds of permits for these projects anytime you're in the water. And floodplain stuff, like you're not allowed to raise the floodplain at all. So they got to make sure they're not doing that, the 100-year floodplain. But yeah, environmental stuff, like if you're taking away a certain amount of open waters of the U.S. is basically how they put it, then you have to like create some other environmental asset or create some other waters of the U.S. That's the only thing I can kind of think of that relates to that. But usually a bridge, if it's not raising the 100-year floodplain and it's a needed thing for the community, usually they don't have to do anything else as far as social aspects go to account for that.
I'm just trying to figure out a way to get a whitewater park right near my house.
Oh yeah. I feel you on that one. The house that I grew up in Boulder, as I said, is right on Boulder Creek, and somehow a really awesome feature ended up in the backyard. I don't know how that happened.
Throughout your time paddling, it sounds like, God, you've been in a boat for 20 years now or something? You've been on Whitewater for a long period of time. What's your highest?
Yeah, I'm 28.
You're 28 now?
I'm 28. Yeah, old as dirt.
What's the highest moment of your paddling career? What are you the most proud of, or something that sticks out at the top?
Definitely a couple things come to mind. Just on a personal note, as far as proud of myself, I don't know. 2016, I had a really, really awesome year. Traveled all over the country, and up into Canada, and did some of the craziest things I've ever done on a paddleboard. And Also crushed it in a lot of the river festivals and the races and everything. Won a bunch of money. Dominated the GoPro Mountain Games, FibArc, all the whitewater races. So that was a really awesome year. But kind of the way I like to think of it is I'm proud of being a pioneer for a cool new sport and getting a lot of people excited about it. The main reason why I like seeing the videos blow up on the internet is because I know the sport is getting a lot of eyes on it, and people think it's cool, and that really helps the future of the sport. So I'm definitely proud of that. And then just on a local community note, like just being able to bring all of my friends on the river all the time. I've gotten so many people that never would have been river people. I've gotten so many people psyched about it and into it. So that's really what I like to look back on and smile about. Yeah.
What about the lowest moment? What about the time you'd rather forget?
Yeah, definitely a couple of those. I've had a lot of shoulder problems, dislocations. I've actually had 3 shoulder surgeries, 2 on my right shoulder, 1 on my left, and so yeah, I've re-injured my right shoulder, after having a surgery. That was probably the lowest point, and it was also like right at the beginning of paddling season in 2017, and that was rough because I had all these plans, and I ended up having to just lay around for the summer, and that was rough. Definitely recommend paddlers take care of their shoulders starting from a young age. Always plays a role in the whitewater sports, and I've had a real rough time with that for sure.
It's amazing how many athletes I've interviewed who have said their lowest moment was when they were dealing with an injury.
Yeah.
It's hard for somebody who likes to be active. What's your best advice for keeping your shoulders fit?
Yeah, well, paddling a lot actually is therapeutic, but a lot of people can't paddle 4 times a week for the entire year. Like Dane Jackson can, but pretty much no one else can make that happen. So you gotta do your exercises, at home and whatnot, just like push-ups here and there. So I just like having a pretty easy routine that I can crank out at home, that I can do for the rest of my life pretty easily. So if you can figure out a routine, I like doing push-ups, pull-ups. You can just look up videos online for shoulder stability exercises. And, when I was a teenager, I didn't consider it at all. I was like, you kidding me? 15, I'm not going to be trying to do physical therapy for my shoulder. But I dislocated my shoulder for the first time when I was 18. So, I think starting early is great. If you got kids they're getting into some gnarly whitewater, doing some big stuff, have them just crank out push-ups before they go to bed and get on that routine.
What advice would you give to a kid who wanted to go out and start paddleboarding on whitewater? They're like, you know what? I want to go run this on a paddleboard. I'm not interested. Like a young Dominique Williams or someone. What advice would you give them?
Yeah, that's a really good question. In a lot of ways it depends, because tons of people that get into whitewater SUP are already rafters or already kayakers. And then a lot of people just see whitewater SUP and they're like, oh, that's cool. And they don't have any river experience at all. So I would say it depends on that. If you don't have any river experience and you're going out there to try paddleboarding on a river, which a lot of people do because it is in a lot of ways way more accessible than kayaking and rafting. You don't have to learn how to roll. You don't have to buy a raft. You can just borrow a friend's board and go try it out, but you don't have the river knowledge. You got to be careful. So I would say don't get in over your head. Definitely talk to someone that can maybe take you. It'd be great to find a mentor of sorts. they can teach you a couple things and just take baby steps. That's what I did. I just started messing around in the Salida Whitewater Park and honing my skills, like ripping across a current and practicing your eddy turns on a paddleboard and stuff. Like, even though it's Salida Whitewater Park at 800 CFS, like those skills transfer to the Grand Canyon. So there's no sense in jumping into something that you're not ready for. But yeah, I had some great mentors, obviously, as I've said. And so just surrounding yourself with other people who are stoked on the same thing and watch them and learn from them is probably the best way to get started.
What about just river SUP in general? I know a lot of the events have been canceled this year. I know we had to cancel the Battle of the Broad. What do you see as far as paddleboarding on the river?
Yeah, I mean, this year is crazy. I mean, 2020 is obviously hopefully a one-off kind of year. Everything's been canceled. All the events that I usually get excited for this time of year have been completely canceled or postponed till August, when there's probably no water anyways. So that is a major bummer. But as far as down the road and like the actual future, I mean, I'm excited about it because the annual events that I go to every year, like we've got a lot of river festivals in Colorado. As far as the number of people that show up and compete and are stoked on it, definitely are not dwindling. So that's good to see. And then there's so many people that don't give a shit about the competitive side of it, that are bringing their paddleboards on their multi-day rafting trips. That's become a huge thing that I've seen on, you sit at your campsite and you watch 15 groups float by, and almost every single one has a paddleboard, so I think that it has a pretty sweet future. It's definitely here to stay, despite what some kayakers might hope.
What do you think? What do you think of these little inflatable river surfboards? I see those as being a big thing in the future. You talk about packing something. I would like to take one of those and put it in the back of my kayak for a lot of trips, and just stay at a place, camp there, surf, move to the next spot. Do you see that catching on?
Yeah, I agree that's a really cool idea. There's the most high-end river surfboards are hardboards, for good reason. You can get more, exact with the shaping and whatnot. But yeah, inflatable boards have potential in so many other ways, just like you said. Roll them up, put in the back of a kayak. They're super durable. Like, you can bring them anywhere. You can throw them on a flight super easily. Bringing those to remote places, definitely something that I've done and got a lot more ideas to do. But yeah, the kayak supported river surf trip, that might have to be one down the road.
And think of the places you could get into, some hidden waves that would be nearly impossible to get any other way.
Definitely.
Let's talk about competition for a second. So this year, 2016, I think you were telling me that you won a ton of money, or, to someone living out of a sick Previa. It was a lot of money that I believe you bought for $1. Isn't that right? Didn't you get one for $1?
Oh yeah, that's a whole story behind Destiny is the name of the minivan. Just got super lucky. Contacted a guy, or saw the minivan in a parking lot at a ski area in Washington. Left a note on his windshield, said, "How much can I buy your Previa for?" Left my phone number. He called me that night, and he's this old retired skier dude. And he's like, "Yeah, my wife and I were talking last night about getting rid of one of our Previas, so I'll just sell it to you for $1." I had never met him before or anything. He's just this really chill guy. Absolutely nothing wrong with the car. He took great care of it since he bought it in 1991. And
Oh, what a
I've been driving it
sport.
for 3 years now and just ripping it all around the country, and it's been great. No issues.
Give me the benefits of a minivan. Why a minivan?
Um, well, let's see. Van life, as pretty much any adventure person has probably noticed at this point, is awesome. And there's a lot of draw to van life. Nobody's buying RVs these days. Vans are just easier. You can park them anywhere. It's just easy to take care of. Less money as far as better gas mileage and than an RV and stuff like that. But minivans specifically, I mean, for me, when I first bought my first van, um, which was also a Previa. I've had two Previas now. um, uh, it was a money thing. I bought a used minivan, but I mean, there's a huge draw to it. It's just easy to deal with. You pop open the back, you can cook out of the back. It's mostly like open air living, so it's definitely a different style than like the Sprinter van life, which you can stand up inside. But yeah, it's just easy to deal with. You can use it as your around town car super easily also. So it's kind of just more versatile, and you can fit a lot of stuff into a minivan, or on top of a minivan too. Take it from me, I lived out of that thing for 5 months straight, and you can bring a lot of stuff.
Yeah. They're kind of branded as this soccer mom deal, but God, I just think that's so far off from what they're capable of.
Oh yeah, I mean, soccer moms got it figured out. They picked the correct vehicle, I think.
Anyway, back to the competition. 2016. What were you doing to get in shape? Like, what was your secret sauce to making it all happen? Like looking back, or even now, how do you get fit? How do you get to the top of your game?
Yeah, yeah. So for a lot of paddlers, especially like living in Colorado, where during the winter there's no water in the rivers, it's freezing, so you're not going to be paddling per se unless you go like hammer on the reservoir, which you can only do so much before you get tired of it. So yeah, I know every spring I know I've got the calendar out. I see these events coming up, and so I get so excited and so stoked to get into shape and start training for this stuff, because competition really gets me going, and it has my whole life. I've been a competitive athlete in a bunch of different sports my whole life, so that's kind of where that background comes from. So I just get stoked for the competition. That really drives me to get into shape. For me, one of my winter sports is Nordic skiing, Nordic ski racing. So I don't know how familiar you are with that sport, but it is like it's the hardest physical endurance sport that there is. So that's my secret sauce is Nordic skiing and racing during the winter. Yeah, I raced all through college, and so it's kind of been my winter thing.
Multi-sport's huge, because
Yeah.
the thing is, just like you say, like if you can't get stoked about doing something, you're not going to be good at it. If you can only, like you say, go to the lake so many times, but if you're fired up about getting up in the mountains or going out on the skis, then you're going to get way more out of it. What about sponsorship? How have you approached sponsorship, and have you had much luck with that? I know that all whitewater sports are a pretty small industry. It's not like it's not like Nike and whatnot is throwing around a bunch of money at that kind of sport. But what's been your approach to that, and where have you found success?
Yeah, I agree. Anybody who's familiar with trying to be a professional in whitewater sports knows that it's really difficult. There's not a lot of money being thrown around. Yeah, for me, it's for the first couple of years, I had some money saved up, and I was working here and there, part-time engineering, designing whitewater parks, like I said. So I had some money, and then after my first year was really successful, lots of videos went viral, like got some really cool photos, started to just send emails to different brands. I got in with Badfish super early, because I'm really good friends with Mike and everything, Mike Harvey. So it was kind of just like get gear for free and pay for travel on my own, which is that's what most traveling whitewater athletes do, which is hard. You get, really hard. Not necessarily making any money unless you win a race, and a lot of the races are hardly any cash payout. And nowadays, now that I've had a number of successes, I find it a lot easier. It takes a lot of time, a lot of years of being at it, and the sport has changed so much throughout and whatnot. So nowadays, I get travel expenses paid for, free gear, but still not making any money. Certainly in the negative on the on the whitewater professional paddling. Yeah.
No, I don't think you're in the minority there. Tell me about the river life, the culture of people on the river. We have a lot of people who listen to the show who are trail runners or mountain bikers. You've got this kind of connection to the Nordic ski area. How would you describe the culture of, river life compared to other sports and other things that you participated in?
Yeah. The river community is awesome. I like you're saying, I've been involved in Nordic skiing, alpine skiing, lots of mountain biking, running cross country, lots of different sports. I did some adventure racing for a lot of years. The whitewater community is very relaxed. It's kind of like the river life translates to just relaxed, nice people, supporting each other in general. Just it's not a huge community, so that, there's just no room for like people hating on each other like you see in the ocean. Especially since the paddleboarding and the river surfing started in the whitewater community, that community is tight. Everyone is like so great, supports each other, and so then you draw this comparison to between, like, you can call it paddleboarding, river surfing on the river. You draw that comparison to the ocean community, and there's so many differences. Like, I don't know if you knew, but I actually moved to California, and I've been spending a ton of time in the ocean, and there's a lot more room for hate out there in the ocean than there is in the river, so that's something that's near and dear to my heart, is just, knowing that the river community is like that. If someone's ever on the river, being, hating on somebody, that's like, where'd you come from? Like, who are you? Like how did you even get to be here on the river? Like, there's no way. And a lot of times it's actually can be someone who moved inland from the coast that kind of has that ocean vibe, or is just visiting or something. Because if you grew up around rivers and in the whitewater community, it's just good vibes all the way around.
Yeah, whitewater makes good people.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. No, very good. It looks like you're there at the office. We're probably going to wind this thing down. Are you at work right now?
Yeah, sort of. My life recently has been crazy, probably like most people's in this pandemic. I actually am currently in grad school at Berkeley. So I was living in Berkeley, then the virus started, and then I moved back to Santa Barbara doing online school. And Santa Barbara is where my girlfriend lived. So I was cranking out online school with her, and then now we both moved back to Boulder. So I'm actually in Boulder right now, mostly doing school, a little bit of work on the side. Yeah.
So what'll happen? You'll go back to Berkeley when all this is over?
Yeah, kind of have the summer off of school, so I'll spend a lot of time here in Colorado when the rivers come up, then zip back out there in August and crank out another semester, assuming we can all get together by then.
One last question here. I'm in the market for a new board to take down Section 9. What should I be looking at? Give me a recommendation.
Section 9, love that section. Good stuff. Yeah, I would say got to go inflatable for a number of reasons. Like I was saying earlier, super durable, super easy to deal with. The designs have come a long ways. Inflatable paddleboards are really high performance. And then there's different versions like racier paddleboards, surfier paddleboards, than just the like crush the whitewater stuff. So without a doubt, for paddling downriver on an inflatable paddleboard through whitewater, the river shred stands out above any other inflatable whitewater paddleboard for sure. Badfish River Shred, that thing crushes. That's the one I use to clean granite, hermit, and lava in the Grand Canyon. So
it works.
Yeah, works. Can hit it on rocks just fine. Which there's a lot of rocks in Section 9. I know.
We'll close us down here with a shout out to any sponsors or anybody you'd like to give a shout out to, and where our listeners can follow you in the future.
Yeah. A big shout out to Badfish Sup in Salida, Mike Harvey, Zach Hughes. Not only have they been supporting me with gear, but they got me into the sport. They've been huge mentors in my paddling career. And then, of course, Recreation Engineering and Planning, which is my dad's company, and my dad, who got me into rivers and basically just fostered my love for rivers from a very young age. Shout out to those guys. Mostly as far as social media goes, it's Instagram for me, at Spencer Lacy. There's no E in my last name. It's just Lacy.
Nice. Well,
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on the Hammer Factor, Spencer, and stay well, man.
All right. Thanks a lot, John, for having me.